But we want to invite you to come aboard and join this amazing Bloomer Boomer community. Register on the website and get updates, show schedules, and member benefits. And now, Florence and Romano, the Windy City Nanny.
Hello. Thank you, Auntie. I'm so excited to be back here with all of you Bloomer Boomers. So last week was my first week, got my sea legs. I'm feeling good now. Grandparents, it's such an important topic to me. I wish I could express to you through the screen just how important grandparents are. So hopefully my enthusiasm for it will come through. So the title of this series is Grandparents, Your Help is Needed. And needed is in big, bold letters because, oh my gosh, I don't think there's been a more important time for grandparents to be involved in the village. So if you're not familiar with me, if you didn't tune in last week, I'll give you a little ABCs on me. So I'm Florence Ann Romano. Yes, Florence Ann is my first name, like Mary Ann. It's a long name, but I wear it proudly because I am named after my grandmother. Her name was Florence, and she was the love of my life, as well as my papa. My papa and Nana are my mom's parents who have gained their angel wings, but are still with me every minute, and the inspiration behind what we're going to talk about today. So I was a nanny for over 15 years, and I learned a lot about childcare and learned a lot about parents and everyone who takes care of children in the village. And after being a nanny for 15 years, I decided to write my first children's book, which was Nanny and Me. It helped children understand the transition, being cared for by parents to being cared for by a nanny or a caretaker. And in today's world, over 64% of families in America need a nanny or a caretaker. And a lot of times now, that nanny is the grandparent. So we're talking about the granny nanny now, or the grandpa nanny, or whichever way you want to put it. So taking all of my experience after all of that time and all of those kids, I started thinking about, okay, what did I really learn that I could bring to the public, that I could really make my own, make my platform and say, these are the things that mean the most to me. These are my convictions. And so I always talk about three things: that you need to build your village, you need to let love in, and you need to ask for help. And so today we are going to talk about the idea that grandparents are this incredible part of the village, this sought after part of the village, but also it can be a delicate line that you kind of dance. It's kind of like walking that tightrope, and you don't want to fall off because, you know, this is kind of delicate terrain. So we're going to straddle the idea. We're going to talk about the idea of what it means to be a grandparent and also a disciplinarian, and how hard that combination can be. And so I want to give you a little background. Like I said, my Nana and Papa were the loves of my life. And, you know, they lived with me growing up. I am part of an old school Italian family. Nana and Papa lived in our house. And so we had this built-in village. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I learned all the important, values of my life through my grandparents. And one of the most incredible things for me, now almost 35 years old, to look back on is think, oh my gosh, you went from your grandparents changing your diapers to you doing that for them. And what a circle of life that is. It's a full circle moment. And I'm not saying that's where you guys are at all in your journey with your grandchildren or as grandparents. But I think there is something beautiful in that vulnerability through that bond that you make with your grandchildren. And you don't have to live with them in their home to do that. But if you are a grandparent that is a nanny right now to your grandchildren, it can oftentimes be difficult to want to be the grandparent that hugs them, loves them, stuffs them full of candy, but also has to be the disciplinarian. Where do you draw that line? And so I'm here to really challenge you about that. Are you comfortable being an extension of the values of that family that you're working for, even though it's your grown children's children? Are you going to be an extension of what they believe in terms of how they're raising their kids spiritually, religiously, educationally, in terms of discipline. I mean, if you were a parent that spanked your kids, but your grown kids are like, there's no way I'm allowing that to happen in my house, no spanking at all. Is that something you can get on board with? Are you going to be able to play by those rules? But beyond getting on the same page about those values, it's the idea of, can you even be a grandparent and a disciplinarian? And I saw it firsthand that it did work well. And the reason it did was there was respect there. Yes, I know my grandparents loved me unconditionally. I had a great time with them. But I knew that I respected them. I was raised to respect them. So what they said went. And I respected them the same way I would respect my parents. So in order to get to that place, it's going to start with a conversation between the parents and the grandparents about what the expectations are. And then you, the grandparents, need to make sure you're challenging your grown children to make sure they're talking to their children, your grandchildren, about the expectations in terms of how they treat you, how your grandchildren treat you. I'm going to go on a little tangent here, but I'm going to say something. I'm a little upset with the way our world is kind of turning here. And this is not a turning movement. So turning, I guess I should say, regarding how we are raising our children to respect their elders. I grew up, again, old school Italian family. It was old school rules. You respected your elders. And I feel today we're getting into this weird gray area where our children think that they're equal to adults. And I am just not about that at all. I believe we should live in the middle. I believe we need to find our balance, our equilibrium with many things in life. There's that old saying, everything in moderation. Well, I think we have a really hard time as a society living in that middle. And so now we've gone too far with the kids, where now they think they're equal to adults. We need to find, again, more of a center. This idea of discipline and being a grandparent, how do you straddle that line? It went well in my family, but that's not the same for every single family out there. There are many challenges that come with that. So I want to ask you directly, what are you struggling with in terms of discipline and being a grandparent, or even beyond that? What are you struggling with in terms of straddling the line of grandparent and this? Is it grandparent and religion? Is it grandparent and discipline? Is it grandparent and education? What is it? What is hard for you right now to be an extension of for your grandchildren or for your grown children? So Andy, I'm going to hand it back to you. Let's get some viewer questions and see what we've got going. And I'll be back to take those questions and hopefully solve some problems.
Great, Florence Ann. There's some questions that exactly what you were just talking about. We'll be right back. Well, we're back with Florence Ann and with some of your questions. Florence Ann, back to you.
So the biggest question I think I get about how to straddle this line is, you want them to love you, and this is a question that I get constantly from grandparents is, if I discipline them, will they not like me anymore? Will they not want to spend time with me because they're just going to look at me the same way they would look at a teacher disciplining them or something like that? And I understand that fear. I do. I understand that fear. But I have to say that, kind of once you dip your toe into that pond, you really have to start to think about, what is the end goal that you have for the relationship with your grandchildren? And I think that's something my Nana and Papa did really well, is that they wanted to make sure that they were there for us in this unconditional way, that they were able to provide comfort and they were able to provide security and this expertise and this knowledge and all of the things that you want from a relationship that kind of spans the decades. I think Nana and Papa were very aware of that they wanted to be a part of that. They wanted very much to be able to play both roles. And so I think for you grandparents that are scared about the grandkids not wanting to be around you as much if you're disciplining them, I'm going to tell you that I remember my Nana talking to my mom about that very early on when they were going to be moving in. And she said, I'm so scared to come because I don't want the kids to be sick of me, or I don't want them to not like me. And so it's a very real thing. But until we started that relationship, there was no way to really know how it was going to go. But because there was that respect, because there was that love, I want to challenge you with this. I got to know Nana and Papa, yes, as my grandparents, but there was something really powerful and really profound in getting to know the people my grandparents were. So there were Nana and Papa, and then there were Florence and Adam. And I always say I got to know both of those entities. I got to know them as my grandparents, but I got to know the people they were. And that's a huge gift. And not a lot of grandchildren get that opportunity to know their grandparents on that intimate of a level. And so I think when you are that village to your grandchildren, you are opening up this unbelievable opportunity to get to know each other in a much deeper way than you ever thought you could. So I personally think that all the risks, I think you need to put that on the back burner. There's not so many. Truthfully, it's more about the gains. It's more about what you can get from this. And I guarantee you will never regret it. And I'm going to leave you with this. My papa, right before he passed away, it was even just days before he passed away. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and I was sitting on the floor in my Nana and Papa's room. My Papa was the first one to pass. And he was sitting in his chair, and my Nana was sitting in her chair, and we were watching TV. They loved these Westerns. This is what they loved to watch, all these old Westerns. Well, Papa loved to watch the old Westerns. Nana was like, I've had enough. Can we put some Frank Sinatra on or something? And Papa was a very sentimental person, but he wasn't mushy. He wasn't very forthcoming with his emotions. But he stopped watching the TV and looked down at me and my 2 sisters. And he looked at each of us in the eye and said, what more could I have asked for in my life? He looked each of us in the eye and said that to us. And I'm getting choked up even thinking about it. It was the most beautiful moment. It was a full circle moment for a grandparent and a grandchild, because we had done something right. We had done that relationship right. And I can only hope that one day when I'm a grandparent that I can replicate that. And I know so many of you out there have unbelievable relationships with your grandchildren. And if you're at all doubting what it is that you're doing, you can always reach out to me, and I'm always happy to talk you through it. But I guarantee you're doing better than you think. And again, the risk of getting into a relationship like this, getting into a deep relationship like this, it's so worth it. It's so worth it. I promise you that. So next week, when I'm back, we're going to keep the conversation going, and we're going to actually dive deeper into what happens between you, the grandparents, and your grown children, and how do you keep those healthy boundaries, because that's difficult too. How do you make sure that you're not stepping on the toes of your grown children as they're trying to raise their kids? But you also want to be able to offer advice and wisdom. But how do you do that in a really appropriate way? So that's what we're going to talk about next time. And we'll keep diving deeper into all these feels about grandparents. But I think you can tell that I'm super passionate about the role grandparents play. And all of you are such a cherished part of that village, a sought after part of that village. And right now, and always will be, an important, very important, critical part of that village. So you've been given a tremendous opportunity in this world. Your grandchildren have been given a tremendous opportunity to get to know you in that way. So I'm here for you during that journey. So Andy, back to you.
Did you want to take a couple of questions from some of your viewers?
Sure.
Okay. Well, you know what? This one is so perfect about what you were just talking about, and I love that story you just told. But this is Bob, and he says his adult daughter disagrees in front of her kids about how he disciplines his grandkids, and he's asking, shouldn't that be done in private?
Bob, I totally agree with you. I think that absolutely needs to be done in private. It's the same way where like parents fighting in front of their kids. You don't really, it's healthy to see a little squabble happen. That's okay. That's life. Listen, we're Italian. We have a lot of passion in our family. So you get into some squabbles, but I do think that needs to be addressed behind closed doors because you, Bob, you want to be a unified front with your grandchildren in terms of their optics about you, the grandparent, and then their parents. They want to see you guys united. So that conversation should happen behind closed doors. And Bob, you should feel encouraged to go and have that conversation with your granddaughter. Don't pick a fight or anything like that. Just say, hey, I would love just to have this conversation with you without the kids around. And you get always more flies with honey, as they say, more flies with sugar, whatever that saying is, more flies with honey. I think that's the way you need to approach it. But you're right to actually have a conversation about it.
Yeah. This one, I have another one here from Phyllis, and she says, I feel sorry for my grandkids because they're always going so many different houses with different grandparents. I don't know. And it must, she says, it must make their heads spin. What do you think of that? She asks.
Well, I think we're talking about the idea of, the village again. And I always say that, kids can't have enough love. If all these people are showing them love and are good role models for them, heck, send them away to those grandparents all the time. That's great for them. They're getting different experiences from each of those grandparents. Just like you have friends for different reasons, you talk to different friends for different reasons. Like, oh, this is the one that's going to give me tough love. This is the one that's going to coddle me. This is the one that's going to laugh with me. This is the one that will let me cry. It's the same thing. Children need to figure that out as they're growing up about, where do they go for the certain things that they need, not play the grandparents against each other. It's the idea of learning what they need from that relationship. So, it might make their heads spin in terms of, oh, they're exposed to so many people, but I honestly think it's a good thing. I think it's, unless they're vocalizing in a different way, unless the grandchildren are saying that they don't like it or it's overwhelming them or it's stressing them out, I think more love is the best route.
Do we have time for one more?
Sure.
Okay. This is from Debbie, who says she doesn't have the strength she once did, and she's not sure how to tell her grandkids that she feels like she's getting too old for playing the games that they want to play.
Deb, oh gosh, more power to you for saying it, because this is a hard job. You're not sitting there with the energy of a 30-something year old. I mean, heck, I'm talking about myself right now, and I'm even, my days as a nanny, oh my gosh, I would be so exhausted. So I think regardless how old you are, I think kids tire you out. But I think this is a really good learning opportunity, truly, for the kids. One of the things I learned being a granddaughter, being a caretaker also of my grandparents as I got older, was to respect their limits, physically, mentally, whatever it was. Now, I was lucky that my grandparents, were really great until their last breath. They really were in terms of physical and mental faculties. But I think this is a good opportunity for you, Deb, to tell, your grandchildren, that if you just can't do that, or maybe this hurts, or, oh gosh, I just, grandma can't do that. Or, you can tell them that, and they could be disappointed, of course, but I think in the same breath of telling them that, you can always offer an alternative to maybe how you could do something similar to that, or, offer another game or something like that as an alternative. Kids have the attention span, like a gnat. So, if you have another idea, they're going to be thrilled to do that probably. But again, this is a good learning opportunity for children to start paying attention to being there for their grandparents too, about recognizing when they need help. I remember one of my best friend's daughters, my Nana was walking with a walker a little bit at the end, and she was about 4 years old, and she saw Nana go get her walker, and little Liv ran up to her walker and said, okay, Nana, I'm going to hold it here and I'm going to help you walk. And Nana didn't necessarily need someone to help her walk, but it was so cute because her 4-year-old daughter already was aware that, Nana had limitations. Nana had things that she couldn't do, and she felt that at 4 years old, was already aware of that. So I'm not saying, Deb, that you're using a walker or anything like that, but it's the idea that we're raising our children with this awareness of being there for other people and honoring limitations or honoring what people can or cannot do. So I think, again, there's a learning opportunity here. There's a lesson in everything. And I think this is a really cool lesson.
Well, great. Can we will take a real brief break and you can let people know how to get hold of you.
Sure thing.
All right. Well, Florence is back with a few final words.
I'm so thrilled to have been with you guys today for the second time, and I'm thrilled to come back next week. So 1 o'clock Pacific, and what is today? Tuesday already? I don't even know. I'm losing my mind here with it all. Yeah. And we'll talk again about healthy boundaries with your grown children and you as the grandparents, and that can sometimes be a difficult line to straddle, but we're going to find a way to do that. And we even touched on it a little bit today, so that's a nice preview. But it's such a pleasure to be with you all. And I love your questions. And again, you guys are such a powerful community out there. So please remember your worth and your value, because it is immense and priceless.
Thank you so much, Florence Ann.
Thank you, Andy.
Well, Florence Ann Romano, the Windy City Nanny. You can find out more on Facebook, YouTube, on bloomerboomer.com. And if you like this, please like us on Facebook and follow us. Meanwhile, come aboard and join the Bloomer Boomer community. Register on the website and get updates, show schedules, and qualify for member benefits. Until next time, so long.